Hello, my name is Tayo Oyedeji and I'm the CEO at Overwood. Overwood is an investment firm that helps regular people to maximize the gains on their investment in a safe, high yield environment. What do we mean? I think the key thing that differentiates us from everybody else is that we basically invest only in very safe instruments. So we're relatively conservative. Our goal is that every single person that invests with Overwood will never lose a dime of their money. But more importantly, we've structured the firm in such a way that our goal is to be around in 100 years so that your children and their children will also be able to maximize and use the funds that you've invested at Overwood. Okay, so starting a small business. Today we'll go through 5 key things that we think are sort of important to help regular people start a small business so that they can increase the amount of money that's available for them and their families, but also the amount of money that they're able to invest in whatever they choose to. Well, let's start with a quote by Dave Thomas, which I like a lot. It says, "What do you need to start a business?" Right? Thinking about if you want to start a business, what are the 3 key things that you need? The first is that you need to know your product better than anyone else. You need to know your customers, and perhaps most importantly, you need to have a burning desire to succeed. For me, I didn't always want to start a business because I just sort of saw myself as a professional. That is, I'll get a job, and I usually do well at jobs that I work at. So I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur in any way. But something happened when I was young that made me rethink what I thought was my way of life, which is that I'm always going to work for someone and never start a business. When I was 17, my father died, and the sad thing about that was that my father was pretty much the only person in the family that's provided everything we needed. So from school fees to feeding to everything we needed in the house, it all came from my dad. My mom was a school teacher, and that was all she had done all her life. And she was 54, so she wasn't young by any means. And so 3 of us were in university: my younger brother, myself, and my elder sister. And we were worried that we weren't going to be able to continue because the funds needed to make university education work for us was quite significant. And so what then ended up happening was that my mom left her job as a school teacher and started a business for the first time at 54. I remember going with her to the school. She was starting a nursery and primary school because that's what she knew how to do. I remember going with her the very first time that she started that school, and it was her, 1 teacher, and 6 kids in nursery 1 at the very beginning of everything. Well, it's 30 years or so later, and that small school has produced 3 campuses: a huge nursery campus that's got hundreds of students, a separate primary school campus, purpose built for that's got a couple of hundreds of students again, and a secondary school or high school that sits on about 10 acres of land, purpose built for that, and also hundreds and hundreds of students. And so watching someone that had never started a business before in their life, someone that's never worked in business, start from the very scratch and build that, for me was the very first time that I thought, well, if my mom can do it at 54, well, maybe there's a chance that I could also succeed. And since then, I think on a personal level, I've started about 5 to 6 businesses. Some of them have succeeded, others have not. And I think these are some of the things I've learned just walking through that entire model, right? So I'll talk to you about the 4 key things that you need to do well if you're going to bring your ideas to life. Well, the first obvious is to have a good idea, to think through on what's the idea that I want to build or what's the area of business that I want to get involved in. The second is to validate the idea, to prove that it's actually going to work. Okay. So for most people, they actually move from ideation to execution. And I'm saying that there needs to be 2 other levels so that you can increase the likelihood of your success, because most businesses fail. So from the idea, instead of going straight to execute, you validate it, right? You test it on a small micro element of the idea, and then you plan to scale, and then eventually you execute and scale or to a high level. And I'll just help you think through as we work. Let me give you an example. So there was a time that one of my cousins, who happens to be very, very big, I mean, everybody in her family is relatively tall, and they could all be basketball players if they wanted to be. And so one of the problems that she's always had is it's difficult for her to find ready-made clothing and shoes that are her size, because obviously very few things come in XXL size, right? So it was a big problem for her. And so she decided that she was going to start a business to sell things for relatively big people, large people. I don't know what you want to call it, but tall and big people. So everything was just going to be tall and big, right? So that was the name of the business, Tall and Big. In 6 months, the business was dead. Why? Because of what I said earlier. She didn't validate the idea. She didn't use that validation to plan for execution. And so she went straight from the idea to execution, even though there probably wasn't a market for what she wanted to do. Why? Most Nigerians or most Africans are not large, right? So if you're building a business in a niche product, there are a couple of other things you need to do, especially validation and planning. Okay, right. So let's start from the idea, right? I like to say that ideas are cheap. That's why everybody has one, right? Mercedes-Benz is expensive. That's why very few people have it, right? So how do you know ideas are cheap? How many people have, if I had $1 for everybody that's approached me to say, I have this idea, would you help me make it work? I'll be a millionaire, because literally every day somebody comes up and says, I've got this wonderful idea. How do I make it work? Blah, blah, blah. And that's where it is. That's where it dies. So everybody has ideas, but we have to systematically walk step by step until we sort of build the idea and turn it into a business. I like this a lot because Jim Rohn probably gave voice to what I was talking about when he said that all new ideas must be put on a mental scale. That is, we have to weigh it carefully and decide its value before we proceed into making it a business. So if my cousin, like I was saying earlier, had taken the time to weigh the idea carefully before turning it into a business, she probably would not have gone with Tall and Large as a business model. All right. So I'm just going to walk you through each of these things, and then there are 4 elements here, but I'll take time to walk through each one of them, and then we will take it on from there. If you want the slides, there's a very simple way to get it. Send an email to hello@overwood.ng. Again, I'll say it. It's hello, HELLO, @overwood.ng. Ask for the slides from this presentation, and the customer experience people will send it to you. Okay, so refine your idea, right? I think the first thing you need to do is to say, what's happening in the world for this particular business that I'm interested in, right? Then look at the market and say, how many people are buying what I'm interested in selling, and how do they buy it? And do I have a model that makes it easy for them to buy it? But before you also go ahead, you have to say, so who else is doing something that's similar? What's the competition like? And then perhaps more important, you need to sort of understand your customers. Who are the people that are actually buying? So let me give you an example with Overwood, because that's the business I run right now. Well, if you look at the industry in terms of fintech, it's easy to say that it's growing. Although it's not growing really in our space, it's growing more in the payments ecosystem. But when we look at investments that's made easy with technology, there's a market there, globally, from Betterment to locally to, just everywhere. There's quite a bit of traction in that space, right? And who and what kind of people are buying the products? Well, it's people that are tech savvy relatively. But our product, for instance, we want it to be wanted to be more finance than tech, right? So most fintech firms are tech-first businesses. We wanted to be a finance business first, but then use tech to make our finance business more effective. So what does that mean? It means that we're not focused necessarily on people that are very used to technology, right? We wanted it to be that anybody, regardless of their experience with technology, will be able to access our product. So when we looked at the market, we noticed that a lot of our competitors were focused on people that are very tech savvy. We didn't want to do that. We wanted it to be just anybody, regardless of how comfortable they are with tech. So that again is looking at our competition and saying, what are they doing and how can we be different? And then finally, who are the customers who we expect to buy it? We add two options. We could go really high and target the top 1 percentile or 5 percentile of people in our markets. We decided not to do that. We wanted to be strictly or primarily in the middle. So we wanted to speak to maybe like people that are just senior executives to senior managers that are just starting in their not just starting in their career. They've had a few years of experience, probably have a child. They're now looking at what's next, right? So we're not looking at the very bottom of the pyramid. We're not looking at students. We're not looking at people that just finished university, and we're not looking at the highest place in terms of the people that are already extremely wealthy. We want it to be somewhere in the middle, where the gentleman that makes a couple of hundreds or a couple of thousands of dollars a month and wants something better for himself and for his child could come in and invest. So we went through each of these models even before we built Overwood. And I think whatever business you want to start, it's good to look at the industry, to look at the market, to look at the competition, and also finally focus on your customer. Now that you've clarified what's going on in the world, it's about time to then say, who is going to be my target markets? Who are the people that I'm going to be reaching out to, or that are going to buy my products, right? And so our thoughts were that, and again, I'll probably use Overwood as an example again, because it's what is most recent, at least in my mind, right? So we define the product. It's going to be an investment product that is targeted at the middle class, like we said earlier, but most importantly, it uses technology to make it easier for them to access the investment product. Now, in your case, it could be going to start a business that sells shoes to people that already work in a bank or in a corporate environment that do not have time during the day to go shopping for themselves, right? Did you see what I just did? You define the product and then you define the target market, right? So if you're going to do that, that means that to a large extent, you need to be a little bit mobile. You need to be willing to move around. You need to be able to use technology or whatever to make people have access to what you're planning to sell. That's where Instagram comes in. That's where Facebook comes in, because that's where your target market is going to be. The one other thing that we think is important is to sort of differentiate and divide the market into segments and choose the segment that you want to focus on. So in our industry, for instance, a lot of the people in our industry focus on the youth market, young people, right? 15 to 25. That's their core target market. We want it to be a bit different, and our target market is probably closer to 30 to 45, right? So the way we talk is different, the way we think is different, the way we approach the market is different. And so basically your target market then influences everything you do. So on Instagram, for instance, this is a really good example. One of the people that work in our marketing department is very big on TikTok. And she was talking about, well, Overwood, we need to explore using TikTok because it's cool, it's what's in the market. So as the good CEO, I took it upon myself to download TikTok and to spend a lot of time trying to understand it, right? And over a weekend, I was on TikTok literally all through that weekend. And by the time I came back, everybody else that was in marketing did the same thing. By the time we came back, we talked about it. And it was clear to us that we couldn't find an effective way for us to use TikTok to engage with our target market. One, we didn't think a lot of the people that we're trying to reach are on TikTok, but most importantly, we couldn't find a way to be overwood on TikTok. I don't even know what that means, but we couldn't find a way to be who we are on TikTok, right? So again, once you've defined your target market, you've defined it, you've segmented it, it makes it a lot easier to decide on the things you can do and the things that you won't do, right? That then leads from segmentation, obviously, leads to differentiating your product from everybody else, right? So, for instance, I have a friend that owns, that makes bottled water, right? It's such a huge industry, but it's pretty much a commodity. So, how did he differentiate? He only sells alkaline water. So the assumption or the USP, the unique selling proposition, is that alkaline water helps you if you have stomach issues, because it's alkaline. It reduces the acidity in your stomach, right? So basically, he's found a big market that has a lot of players, and he's found a way to differentiate himself, which is what we're talking about, to differentiate his products, right? One of my favorite musicians of all time is actually a young lady called, she's no longer as young as she used to be, but Emily Sande, Emelisande. She's Scottish, Zambian. But what I find interesting about her is the way she consistently differentiates herself from the prevalent pop culture. So Emily will do a couple of tracks that's targeted at pop culture, something that everybody can listen to. But she sort of knows her audience, which are people that are interested in maybe a little more music that's a little bit more, I don't know, some people will say boring, but I think more classical. That's more in the vein of classical music or whatever. So she'll do some stuff for everybody, but then do some stuff for her people, of which I'm one, who just want a little more substance to their music, right? And so it's the same with every single business. The question you need to ask on a regular basis is, how do I differentiate my products from what's in the market? If I'm going to make shoes, how are my pairs of shoes different from what everybody else is doing? If I'm going to have a barbing salon, how is it different from everybody else? If I'm going to have a logistics company, how am I going to be different from everybody else? If we actually stop this seminar here, and the only thing you take away is, when you're building a new product, always ask the question, how am I different from everybody else? Because once you're able to answer that question, to a large extent, it makes it a lot easier for you to build a successful business, right? And then obviously you need to look at finance. What do I need? But I'll show you, because this is where most people start from. So they don't go through the initial stages we talked about. They start from, what do I need in terms of money to make this business work? But in my view, that's like turning things on its head. You need to go through the ideation process first before you arrive at what kind of finance do I need, or how am I going to be profitable and all that stuff. Because money runs to good ideas. But most importantly, money doesn't just run to ideas. Money runs to good validated ideas, right? Okay. Which brings us to the very next, which is validating the idea. How do we know that this is going to work? Again, I talked about, for many people, they go through the first stage that I just went through, and then immediately they go on and start the business. I think it's important to first of all validate the idea before you jump into a full-blown product launch, right? Dan Olson actually says this perfect. He says the main reason why products fail is because they don't meet customers' needs in a way that is better than the alternatives. So one of the things you need to do in validation is to say, how do I meet the needs of the people that I'm interested in reaching in in a way that others are not doing, or in a way that's better than what others are doing. A lot of the steps in steps 1, 2, 3, we already went through them in terms of thinking through on the product. But I just want to focus on 4 and 5 because I think it's the one that most people don't do very well enough. Obviously, you need the market research. You need to think about how do I add value to what people already get. You need to map out your user flow, which is how do people get to find out about my product and how do they get to use it. But on step 4 is where I think it's absolutely crucial to get it right if you're going to build a good business. It is what aspect of this business can I test before I go full blown? So let me give an example. So my cousin that I talked about, she went on and bought a bunch of big and tall clothes from England, she went to Dubai, went to China, filled up everything with clothes and shoes, all size XXL plus, really big and everything, and nothing sold. Well, how could she have tested that business to confirm if it's viable? She really could just have bought just pairs of shoes. And instead of hundreds and thousands of pairs of shoes, she could have bought 20 to test it. And then she could have tried to sell the 20. And if she can't sell 20, that means she can sell 100. Right? So that way she's validated the idea before starting. How did we validate Overwood? Because I think it's a really good model that many people can use. We said to people, if you would like to, I told them the idea that is would like to build an investment product that is focused on fund safety. So we're not playing games, we're not cowboys, we're not running around doing crypto, doing this, doing all that stuff. It's basically a pure and simple investment product that is focused on the safety of your fund. The promise we've made is that 100 years from now we'll be here, and your children and your children's children will be able to access your funds without any problem. I wanted to give an example, but I'll give it because I think it's important. One of our clients died recently. Really, really sad. And I got an email that said this person was no longer with us. After speaking with the family and everything and, commiserating with them and all that stuff, we sent them a letter highlighting the funds she has with us. Some of it was in Overwood Prime, and she had an Overwood child for all her children. And we're able to work with the family to transfer the Prime investments to Overwood Child Investment for the children, to just share it amongst them. And then to put a calendar in place that on the day that each of these children turn 21, they will be able to get the fund. We will reach them and give them the fund and find them wherever they are and be able to give them the fund. That's because for us, again, it was a really sad moment, but that for me made me extremely happy because I understand what those kids are going through, right? And the fact that we're able to do that, knowing that it's a long-term game we're playing. We're not here today, gone tomorrow. It just made me so happy. And I'm wondering what in the world I was talking about that got me to that. I think it was about prioritizing your MVP features. What are the things that you can test and put into your products to at least get started and then see what I was talking about how we launched Overwood. Yes. So what we did was we asked people, this is what we want to do. Would you be interested in being a part of it? And about 100 people said yes. All right. So we said, we're going to launch this product in December 2019, and we'd like you guys to be our first customers. We call them our pioneer investors. And sure enough, for me, it was the weirdest thing in the world. We launched, I believe, on December 19, 2019. And at the end of that day, we had 75 million naira in investments. And I was I was blown away. Because now that we are tested with these 100 people, it meant that to a large extent, we could then build a business, right? What if we had gone to rent a house, a big house, rent, buy all these cars, do all these things, and then now let's see if we do have a product, right? So in our view, the way to launch a new product is to build a small element of that product, measure and see if people actually patronize it, learn from that, and then push that into your planning process for the main product. Now, Mr. Herbiniak says, without a careful, planned approach to execution, you're not going to get your strategic goals met, right? So in our view, after you're done with the MVP, just testing it, small element of the entire business, test it. For instance, our MVP lasted almost 6 months because we didn't say, oh, day one was great, let's go on. No. Then we built what had worked for the 100 people and showed it to the world, right? So that by, I think, April of 2020, we had about 1,000 people on that platform, right? So what that meant to us was, whoa, it looks like we have a business now. Right, so it meant we can now invest in a few more things. We can buy a few more things. We can get a few more people and just sort of scale gradually from there. I think if you take 2 things away from this, let it first be that you need to differentiate your product, and the second be that you need to start small, test the model before you scale into something bigger. So in scaling is where you now start putting a business plan together. Okay, so what's going to be our mission and vision? What's going to be our SWOT analysis, people, process, products, how are we going to be profitable? What's our marketing strategy? How are we going to sell? What's our financials? What's the legal structure that we need to go into? You see, many people start by writing a business plan, but you really don't know what the business is, right? Until you get started, until you test with a small element of it, right? Oh, there's one bit of our own model that I skipped. The initial plan for Overwood was that it was going to be an advisory model. That is, when we're building the model, was that we would not be an investment firm, we'll be an advisory firm. So people come to us and then we help them think through on their personal finance, and then we'll give them everything they need to do, and then they pay us for the advice and we'll move on. So we tested that model and it never worked. We never got paying customers. We got people that were willing to have us analyze their investments and their model and everything, but they never paid. They were not willing to pay. So our first business model failed. It was when we moved to set the second one that we then began to get some traction. And so in my view, that is the way to go. You start with a small MVP, you try it. If it doesn't work, you try another MVP. You keep trying until you find the one that works, and then you build a business plan and scale, right? So I like this a lot. Shama says ideation without execution is delusion. So basically, now that you've tried everything, it's time to scale. And in my view, you see, a lot of times when we talk about scaling, we give all these principles and models, do this, do that, do that. In my view, if you start by taking your 500 or 200 or even 50 ideas, thinking through all of them in terms of the customers, in terms of the market, in terms of what you're trying to do. And then you take one and test it. If it doesn't work, test another one. Test another one. Small models, because every single test has a very high rate of high potential of failure, right? And then finally you arrive at one that looks like it's going to work. Right? Then you begin to plan for that one and then build other things into it, right? If you've gone through that to a large extent, I think for most people, it's going to take the likelihood of failure for your business from easily 90% plus to less than 50%, right? And so in that case, you probably need a few more things beyond just understanding the business to be successful. The first in my view is you need to just be consistent. You need to persevere, and you just need to keep going, because there's no business you start that will not face obstacles and setbacks. You won't wake up one day and all of a sudden your business is the greatest thing that's ever happened. And so a lot of times you find out that successful business owners are just people who didn't stop. People who didn't quit. People who just continued despite all the setbacks and obstacles they faced. And so the first thing I want to say is, guys, you've started. It's so easy to stop. It's so easy to fail. So just go on. Just keep going. The second thing that I think will help you once you move to the place where you're scaling your business is to use customer insights. I talk with customers a lot. I call them to understand what's going on in their lives, what's going on in their business, how can we be a better partner for you, how can we help you, and all that stuff. I remembered, this was just last week. There's a gentleman, one of our investors, that's been trying to go study abroad for a long time, and then finally, it came through. He got the opportunity to do it. And so he comes to me and he says, well, I need a lot of money. And he has quite a bit of money with us. And he said, I need a lot of money. It was a lot of money to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. And I'll need to withdraw one of my investments earlier than planned. And so he came to me on a Wednesday, I think it was last week Wednesday. And when he came to me, I said, we actually manage your funds in such a way that it's tagged and tracked to certain times and may be difficult to do what you're asking for. And he said, but I really do need it. So I said, okay, so this is what I'll do. I'll make sure that by Monday of next week, you'll get it. I'll do whatever it takes. Even if whatever it takes, we'll do it. We'll make sure you get it. The key thing for me was that the gentleman knows me, because we had spoken a few times with me trying to understand how we can best be partners to him, right? So when that request came in, he didn't even call anybody, he spoke to me. That's me just saying, your business can't be, you have customer service or you have people that do, you have to be the customer service. You have to be the one that knows all the parents. And I watched my mom do it, because my mom knew all those parents, every single one of the kids and the parents. She knew every single one of them. So when there's something wrong with a kid in her school, she knows the number to call in terms of the parents. Or when a parent is struggling with, she knows how to work with them to make it effective. So eventually what we did was we actually got him the money on Friday last week instead of Monday. And so he was able to do the things he wanted to do. And it was just absolutely amazing for him. And so in my view, customer insight is something that helps you build a really good business model. Africans. One of the biggest problems on our continent is that we're always looking for big deals. Let me just do one deal and make so much money that sets me up for life, right? In my view, the most successful people I know are people that have taken time to build the success. We need to focus a little more on the long game. We need to think through on how do we scale gradually? How do we become successful? Because businesses that are focused on one big deal or two big deals and just pursuing big deals all over, eventually they fail. Because what happens when a big deal doesn't come along, right? And so in my view, I mean, maybe it's just my own bias. I don't know if it's the only way to I'm careful to say this is the only way to succeed, because I know it's not. I know people that have succeeded chasing big deals after the other, but I found that there are more people that fail chasing big deals than people that fail being strategic and looking at how to build business gradually. So my view is, let's just focus on building for the long term rather than I just want a couple of big deals. The fourth one is we need to review and optimize. That is, it's not everything you start that's going to work exactly the way you planned for it to work. So sometimes you have to change some things, review again and say, oh, why don't we improve this? Why don't we make this better? For instance, every single day, I'm asking my team, what can we do better than we did it yesterday? So every day we're looking to improve one aspect of our business or the other. Every single day we're improving something. We're asking questions around what can we do better today. So you see, like in 2 years, and Overwood's been around for almost 2 years now, we've improved our platform 3 times. We're building the 3rd iteration of our platform right now, right? We've changed our website, our landing page on our website about 3 to 4 times, because every day we're just asking questions around what else can we do better. We've got a small team intentionally because, once again, like I said, our strategy is very conservative. So we're never going to make the kind of money that will enable us to just spend money anyhow. We're always going to be small. We're always going to be nimble. We're always going to be focused on long-term growth rather than just making big deals all over, right? So for us, we have to be efficient, right? And so that efficiency comes from optimizing the things we do on a day-to-day basis. And so if I'm advising anybody that's starting a business, I'll say just always ask one question: what can we improve today relative to what we did yesterday? And then finally, again, this comes through in our own philosophy: scale gradually, right? Don't suddenly wake up and say, I want to open 5 branches of whatever it is that I'm doing, right? Just scale gradually. Perfect the business model with one single customer in one single location. Make sure it works perfectly before you pick up a second location or a second set of customers. That, in my view, is one of the things that I wish we would do better on our continent, because I was talking to a gentleman that had done everything else that we talked about and had gradually scaled his business to the place where it was really, really doing well. But now he was, when we spoke, it was almost 80 years old. And he was just talking about how he had built this business over 40 years, and now he's wondering who's going to take it over and who's going to run it. But the lesson to take from it was that everybody looks at the gentleman and says, "Oh, it's such a successful man. He's so wealthy, so this is so that." But thinking about the fact that it took all of 40 years to build that business to the place where it is now, in front of everybody, and it's now like a shining city on a hill. So my view is the best businesses are the businesses that scale gradually, and with every time they scale, they sort of do something better than they did yesterday. And so I just want to thank you for listening to me. My name again is Tayo Oyedeji. I'm the CEO at Overwood, and we're at overwood.ng. We've got the social handles there at overwood.ng. Email, if you want this slide, you can just send an email to hello@overwood.ng, and our phone number is on our website. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Adios.